Hi, welcome to the Advent 7 podcast. My name is Frank, and I'm joined by Ed. Hello.
Hi.
We're talking about the horror media that we love to fear. It's part of our Halloween special we're doing. So we're going to be going to the media, the games, the movies, all that stuff. The ones that make our skin crawl and our turn back and watch our shoulder as we walk at night. Yeah, but first we like to plug in some things. We recently had one of our friends, Andrew, do his entire doing a stream for Metroid Dread. Please go check that out. Also, check out the Star Wars Vision podcast we've been doing. They went through and reviewed all 9 episodes of it. It sounds like it's been really fun. So please go and enjoy it, please. Please check out some of the other content we have already. Links will be in the description below. For all things anime, video games, and comic books, please follow us on Twitter at Advent7, or please visit our website, advent7.com, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now, let's head right in. Okay, Ed. As far as they know, I'm pretty big into horror, as our last podcast showed. How did you get into it?
So for me, it was always around when I was a kid. I had an older stepsister who was several years older than me and my sister, and she would always watch a bunch of horror movies, and we would watch them even though we weren't supposed to. And I always had the Goosebumps books and stuff, but I didn't really get into it until later in life when I was an adult. I'm a writer, and I used to do a lot of creative writing. At this point, it's mostly for work, but I used to do a lot of creative writing, and I was always really impressed by horror as a genre before I got into it, because they could create such a strong emotion so quickly and with so few words, or a single image or anything like that, which is just something that I wasn't used to seeing from other mediums. Right? You can get really sad from something, but usually need a lot of buildup and something like that. One of my favorite stories is my favorite horror stories is super short. It's a pretty famous one. It's the story. There's a child upstairs playing in his room, and he hears his mom call him for something downstairs. Say his name, and he starts to walk downstairs, and then someone grabs him and puts their hand over his mouth, and he tries to yell, and he tries to get away, but he can't. And he looks up, and it's his mom, and she says, "Don't go down there. That's not me." And just with like a single paragraph, it just gives me the shivers, and I was so impressed by that.
Yeah, I mean, horror always has that draw to it. That it draws you in so fast. For me, especially, I was watching horror movies at a young age. My mother didn't have this concept of like this is for children. Again, we were probably too young to fully understand what this was, so she would just put it on and go, "Well, it's the movie she's watching, so we'll watch it as well." I think I famously told him that my first horror movie was Child's Play 2. So the Chucky series has always been a special place in my heart for movies like that. I mean, I saw him go down the drain with the last few things with the newer ones, but I mean, it's been coming back. They're having a new TV series going on at the moment, and it looks great. So I've been more wanting to do that. But besides the horror movies I grew up watching as a child, I also got into stuff like books. I mean, we'll go to that later on, but I think, as you said, that it's able to grasp you so tightly with very few images, and that vivid imagination that you have as a child scares the crap out of you.
Oh yeah, as a child especially.
When you're envisioning these things happening to these characters, and you're like, "Holy crap!" I mean, I think after a while I got jaded with that fact, and so it just kind of wore off for me. But I still enjoy them.
Well, you get used to stuff over time, I think, and it's probably good that your thresholds raise a little bit, because I think back to like when I was 8, I remember having nightmares and not being able to sleep because I read the Choose Your Own Adventure Space Vampire book. And I'm glad that my standards have risen a little bit for what it takes to, throw me into a panic.
Yeah, same thing here too. Like again, Chucky was a very scary doll when I was growing up. But after a while, I was like, oh, it's a 2-foot tall doll. I could probably just kick down the stairs. Things
That's
like
what
that.
All the people in the Chucky movies think.
Oh, I mean, they're pretty. I mean, people in horror movies are pretty stupid, as it seems. So,
oh yeah, just almost universally, that's very true.
So it's that sort of fact that they can't see past the absurdity that it is. But so as we're on this topic of books, what books have you read that really thrilled you in the horror genre?
So I have to admit, when it comes to books, I'm pretty underread in this sphere. I've read some of the classics, and by which I mean classics. I've read, Dracula. I've read Frankenstein, Carmilla, um, and that's pretty much about it. When I was younger, I read a lot of the Goosebumps books, and then I read some of R.L. Stein's adult fiction when I was a kid, and probably shouldn't have.
Oh, yeah, the Fear Street series.
This was I think a standalone, something about
Oh,
I
okay.
think it was called The Babysitter or something like that is the one I'm particularly thinking of that I checked out from the library.
Hmm. I think I've read that as well, but like Fear Street was like his more or adult oriented or teenage oriented ones instead of like the Goosebumps books.
I
Yeah.
recall other people having read those, but those I never personally read.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, I read pretty much the classic ones, like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Those
Oh
creepy
yeah,
images.
I did
Those,
have a lot of I do have a lot of collections of like scary stories and stuff like that that have a lot of those things in them. At this point, those are mostly outdated in favor of going to a creepypasta wiki or something like that, but I still have a lot of fun with them.
Dunwich Horrors and the H.P. Lovecraft ones was always ones I grew up reading as well. I mean, I read much higher level books when I was a kid, so things like that was always drew me to them, especially the H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh yeah,
The idea that something out there that you cannot understand and you cannot imagine, and if you try to, will make you go insane was always one of my favorites. I think Dunwich Horror was my favorite one out of all of it. Did you
I
ever read any of those?
I have actually. Now that you say that, I don't know why I didn't think of that, but I have read At the Mountains of Madness, which
Ooh,
I really enjoyed. Some other short fiction, and while I'm thinking about it, a bit of Poe also, though I don't know, like not all of Poe I think quite qualifies as horror, but something like The Pit and the Pendulum definitely does.
yeah. I mean, we read the Cask of Amontillado for English because
A
Poe was
classic.
a Poe was very much British literature. Um, oh, was it American? Is Poe American?
I should really know, and I don't.
Because it throws that into there. I think he's American though. I think I got that wrong, but it is a very American novel, I believe. But no, yeah, like the way he was able to craft those short stories and poems was able to really get those things flowing, get the juices flowing for me in my brain of that adrenaline rushing and that dopamine for the
I
why I like horror.
I completely agree. I think of the Pit and the Pendulum in particular. I think if you can show me a video of the situation that he's describing in that short story, and I don't think it would scare me near so as much as the prose that he writes. It's very intense.
Another one I read was, I mean, I read a lot when I was a child, so I read a bunch of other things. There was a couple Star Wars novels now that are technically no longer canon. They're part of the Legends part of it. So they were called Death Trooper and the Red Harvest.
I'm
Uh,
familiar with Death Trooper. I was working at Barnes and Noble when that came out, which definitely dates me when you say you read it as a kid.
I think I think I was in elementary to junior high around that area.
Oh man, I'm old.
It might have been out earlier, but I know they got those too, and I read those because again I like Star Wars. Growing up, Star Wars was one of my favorite movies. The original trilogy was probably my favorites. I mean, I enjoyed the prequels, but these two books though specifically because I started off watching a lot of zombie stuff. I don't know
Mhm.
how are you with zombie as a horror genre?
Uh, to to be entirely frank, it's not my first favorite. I was into it quite a bit when I was like in my late teens and early 20s. It was kind of around a lot at the time. Not that it's really died down, of course. Stuff like The Walking Dead is still out there making bank, but it was quite around quite a bit, and I did enjoy it a lot at the time. But I think almost for different reasons than I enjoyed horror media. When I came to zombie media, I kind of looked at it like a survivalist sort of deal, like almost like I was reading The Hatchet or something, which actually the author of that just died today. Rest in peace. something like that. So to me, I didn't get the same vibes of it off of horror. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. What were you saying?
No, yeah, no. Death Troopers was about the rebels and them being tasked on this junk ship or this prison
Mhm.
floats that had these characters in there. So it had Han Solo and Chewbacca in the books, which was unheard of to me because
Oh
again,
wow, yeah.
yeah, they were one of the main characters in the book. So they were on this prison float, this prison barge with zombies. It was really cool to see. And then and then the next book flashed all the way past the prequels into like the far past of the Republic to where the Sith was creating outposts on different worlds and creating like academies for Sith, and
Okay.
it brought back to like it started like the whole like zombies were in Star Wars, but like the start of it all. So like books like that were very fun to read to me because I enjoyed reading it. And as I grew up, I kind of stopped. As now, I don't read it as much, but I do watch movies like that. But just reading it was able to get me going when I was get that adrenaline rush when I was a child. So, but then when I started growing up, I started doing movies. What kind of movies do you enjoy, really?
So for me, my number one favorite is the haunted house movie. I love every haunted house movie I've ever seen, no matter how corny it is. I love Hell Haunting of Hell House. I love Poltergeist, of course. Um, I love let's see, what are some others? Amityville Horror. Um, one of my favorite films, I think, one of my favorite horror films of all time is the 1962 The Haunting, which I recommend to everybody because it's like I was saying before, the ability of horror to provoke strong emotions with very little. There are almost no effects in that movie, and it's scary as heck. Like it's genuinely scary even to this day, and I really respect that film.
Hmm. I didn't really see haunted houses as like a different media besides like ghosts. So I kind of
Mhm.
can't, yeah, I kind of like can't split the difference with those things. But I understand what you mean about that. Again, zombies were one of my favorite movies. So things like the old George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the
Uh-huh,
Dead.
uh-huh.
Those were one of my favorite things growing up as well. But there was a whole section of like spin-offs from like Night of the Living Dead, which they did called Return of the Living Dead. The
Oh yeah,
first,
yeah.
yeah, the first couple were kind of okay, and then it started becoming more hacky and like kind of a spoof of itself. But like that's as we got like into the '90s, so it kind of made sense how like that '90s cheese
Oh yeah, that
was
was
in
everywhere.
everything. Yeah, was
Uh-huh,
everywhere with
uh-huh.
that. What other horror movies did you enjoy? Because I know so besides the haunted house, there was like the slashers and stuff.
Well, actually, so that was part of why I suggested it as one of our discussions, is just because I actually don't click with slasher movies that much, or at least that's what I've said. But I realized when I was reviewing the stuff that I liked for this, that actually, like some of my more formative, experiences with horror films were slasher movies that I still look back on very fondly. I Know What You Did Last Summer is the classic. My stepsister loved that, so I saw it all the time, and some of those sequels. Um,
Who was
uh,
that? Who was in that first one? Because I remember watching it, but I don't remember exactly what went in it.
let's see. It's been a very long time since I've seen it. Okay. Oh wow, I didn't realize they remade this or something. I just did a Google search. Apparently, there's a 2021 I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is
Oh,
fascinating. Oh yeah, first one has. I knew there was someone whose name I knew. Jennifer Love Hewitt and Sarah Michelle Gellar are in it. Then Ryan
that's
Phillip and Freddie Prinze Jr.
oh
Kind of a
I
star-studded cast for the time, especially.
don't understand why I forgot that they were in it. Jesus, that's a very big cast for that, really.
Oh yeah, big time. I think that might
Oh,
have actually been. I can't remember. Don't exactly remember what the timeline is here, but I know that my stepsister really liked Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and she may have watched this because Sarah Michelle Gellar was in it. Wait, is that? That's yeah, that was Buffy. Okay, I used to get
yeah.
her and the girl who played Sabrina mixed up, but
Oh, I mean, there was an actual movie for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but Sarah Michelle Gellar wasn't Buffy, so
oh yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I always trying to figure out who's which is which. But I think after a while, after watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer like a lot, so it kind of made sense that Sarah Michelle Gellar always Buffy.
Yeah. Interesting.
Um,
Her Wikipedia page lists "I Know What You Did Last Summer" first as her in her list of successful films.
um, I mean that was a really big film at the time. I can see that being one of the
Yeah. To me, again,
main.
of course, I think it's a classic, but I've wondered if everyone else thought the same because I feel like it doesn't come up in discussion as much as something like Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th or Halloween.
Yeah, like those things tend to get like sidelines, like the classics, the 1970s or like the 1980 ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, we just skip a whole period of the 90s where like Scream came out.
Oh yeah, Scream definitely.
So like again, that 90s cheese like blends everything together. So it kind of like pushes everything together and makes everyone seem to forget it. But yeah, I mean, there's like Scream was a very big one about that as well. At the same time, around the 90s, of where those slasher films where it just played on the fact that we knew what horror tropes were.
Oh yeah, definitely. Scream is of course a classic for that. For it's a horror movie for horror movie fans specifically.
I mean, I think every generation gets that because we also have now the what's the one created by Josh Whedon, Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, Cabin in the Woods is great. Cabin in the Woods is, yeah, like you said, it's very much a it enhances that experience if you're familiar with the tropes.
Yeah. Let's go back a little bit, back a little forward about like let's talk about the 80s. So like you saw things like Jason, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm
Mhm.
Street, and all that stuff. Did you ever watch like as we go to like the early 90s, like Candyman or things like that?
I believe I saw Candyman in the '90s at some point with my stepsister, but I was very young. I when I've re-encountered scenes from it and stuff like that, they seem familiar, but I can't remember it very well.
Okay. Like, again, everyone has like that certain area that they always watch. My again, mine is always zombies and slasher films like that stuff. So like I'm always trying to figure out what people would like because again, doing this with our group of friends, no, not all of them like horror films.
Yeah, for sure.
So trying to get them into watching something is always always a thing. So we can skip to like the 2000s where things like did you ever watch a movie called The Strangers?
And that one I'm not familiar with. I don't think I've heard of that one.
So this couple goes to this house and then they're staying for the night or whatever. During the night, they're getting random like knocks on the door, phones are being rung, and they see people outside their house. They're freaked out because people in mass, and they stalk them out throughout the rest of the night, and then they just have to try to survive this. It's that sort of like psychological horror where they don't know what's going on, they're deeply afraid, and they don't know what these people want.
The unknown is a big part of contributes a lot to the fear for me. I think I appreciate that sort of thing.
Yeah. Again, I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, so like there's cornfields for miles on end sometimes. I lived on the edge of town, so like I would look out one way and see the road leading into town. I look at the other way and I just see fields going on things. So like Jeepers Creepers was a very
Oh
big
yeah,
movie
yeah.
for me as well
I
because again, middle of nowhere, it could happen to anyone going down the road on a dimly lit highway. Creature come falling from the sky, picks up a car. So like it's very much written for that type of area and made me feel like, oh crap, something could be crawling out at night.
Yeah, I lived on an acreage outside of Fremont for a while, and we were surrounded by crops, and you had those cornfields like you're talking about, where you can't see very far, and if you go on them, it's easy to get lost, and it's a very creepy environment.
I mean, I think that was the first time I saw Justin Long in anything. It's
Mm.
like the very first movie had Justin Long as one of the main characters, and I don't know her name. God bless my soul, but she's from other things too. The old woman who tells her the story of Jeepers Creepers.
Okay.
And she's in a bunch of other things too, but I recognized her when I was watching the movie. I'm like, oh, that's the one actor from that show. But like, I think that was the first time I saw Justin Long. Um,
So I'm gonna insert a little break here real quick because
sure, sure.
yeah, it's been about 20 minutes since we started, and we are gonna drop a few codes for some spooky games, some of which are horror games, and some of which are just horror themed stuff. Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna drop the code for Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, and the Steam code is NXRR4T7Z28 8DBVD. So whoever gets to that first can have it, and I hope you enjoy the game.
So we talked a little about movies. Were they, because we just brought up the fact about you're giving these codes out for Steam games. Was there any video games that you played besides that you enjoyed for horror movies? Because I know I didn't really play that many video games that related to horror. How about you?
So actually, that's a huge area of interest for me, and especially in the last several years, I've been playing through quite a bit. Probably my favorites, one of my absolute favorites is the Fatal Frame series. Like I said, I'm a big fan of haunted house stuff, and a lot of the games tend to be about, hell monsters or zombies, and I enjoy those too, but there aren't too many haunted house games out there. And I really enjoy the Fatal Frame games for that. And I love the mechanic of having to take pictures of the ghosts, because you can fight them, but you're not that strong, and so they are a giant threat, and you have to wait for them to get really close to you before you can really take the picture. And the first Fatal Frame has a lot of really good organic scares, right? So we'll talk about this more when we go talk about jump scares a little bit later. But there's situations where it wouldn't just flash something at the screen at you, but the developers had set things up in such a way that they knew how you were going to react, and they knew that you'd turn the camera, and it just scared the bejesus out. I just scared the bejesus out of my own self, turning the camera with my own fingers, and I was just very impressed by that.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about the Fatal Frame series. I wasn't really much into video game horror things, because again, to me, zombies were just fodder. We just shoot them and they move on.
Mm-hmm.
So like again, horror games wasn't my favorite. I think I did play. I remember playing something like Fear, the Fear series. Did you ever play that?
It's been on the list. I've heard very good things. I've heard it's a better shooter than a horror game, but I don't know. That's just what people have told me.
Okay, I played a bit of that, and then I played a bit of Resident Evil, because again, zombies, fodder for bullets. I think the couple Resident Evils I played were like the very early ones. So like Resident Evil, I think I played Resident Evil 1, and then I played Resident Evil 2. I wasn't really much in those games as much as I thought I was going to be. So I really did, it kind of bounced off the fact for me.
It's interesting, because those early ones, I think the zombies very much are a threat. I guess I haven't played much of 1 and 2, but I played Code Veronica, and I was pretty scared by that a number of times. And again, some really clever game design when there's this zombie banging on this window with ammo right next to him, and just creep up, waiting for him to burst through the window. I grab through the ammo, figuring he's going to burst through the window. Then he doesn't. So I relax and I try to walk away, and then he bursts through the window, grab me, and it scared the heck out of me.
Yeah, that natural horror where you're expecting something to happen, it doesn't, lowers your guard, and then bam, hits you right there. I'm like,
oh yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect.
So like games are a big miss on me. Do you recommend anything I could play then? Because again, I've been wanting to find some horror games for myself.
Yeah, if you, I would recommend. I guess it sounds like you've played some of the Resident Evil stuff. Code Veronica in particular, I think, is good. I don't know how hot a take that is with the Resident Evil crowd. I have some friends who are very into Resident Evil, but I have really only played a handful of things. I also really like I said, I like Fatal Frame. The one thing that I've been, I think, most impressed with this year that I wasn't expecting to like as much as I did was Darkwood, which it's not a game that came out this year, but it's a game I've played this year, which it doesn't look like it's going to be scary. It's a top-down game. It has mechanics that are very similar to something like Hotline Miami, where you're opening doors and you have a limited field of view. And it looks kind of goofy when you're looking at it, but when you're playing it, like the atmosphere is really good, and the sound design is incredible. It's so scary. The main gist of the game is that you have to survive the night. You explore during the day, and then you have to just survive the night. And the stuff that there are so many things that can happen during the night that are just scary as heck, and noises that just things insistently knocking on the door, and and trying to get in and stuff just shifting around the room, and it's, oh man, it's actually very scary.
I remember playing Outlast. I think I remember playing a bit of Outlast,
Mm-hmm.
and Outlast was a very atmospheric one. You have the camera you always have to look through to see at pitch black, and then most of the time you're running away from something, and that always freaked me out when I was playing because it put me into the position of this person very much so that I was afraid of going around corners sometimes because something might pop out and have to attack
Oh
me.
yeah.
Like things like that would always freak me out when I was playing games. So I have to always make sure to like check both corners, run like peek around stuff to make sure. Had my headphones turned up to the highest point I can without blowing my eardrums, so I could hear like the tiniest pin drop if something was to be walking up behind me.
That can definitely backfire on you too. I remember when I was playing Resident Evil Revelations when it was a 3DS game exclusively, and I decided I was gonna play it late at night in the dark with my headphones on. And there's this boss that before you fight her, she's crawling around in the air ducts, and you can hear up there, and you can hear it going like, "I can see you," and oh man, it shook me so much I could hear every little movement.
So because that was another part of the game where that aspect that was able to draw you into the atmosphere and make you forget that you're playing a game instead of you're running for your life most of the time
Oh yeah.
was made it fun for me because I also played Alien Isolation.
Oh yeah.
That freaked me out because again you're playing as Ripley, but not Ellen Ripley, but I believe her daughter in that game. And again, you're in this giant, massive ship that's either on fire, pitch black, or crawling with robots, and you just hear the alien crawling through ducts, creeping behind stuff, and the music just getting you. It's pounding, it's going and going, and it stops. It goes quiet, and you're like, "Did I go? Did the thing leave? Did it run?" And then it starts going again. I'm like, "Oh God, I need to run! I need to run!" And I've never been more scared for my life, scared in like playing a video game than having to hide from the alien, from the xenomorph, than that. So haven't played much, but I know I have very vivid memories of being scared shitless trying to run from this alien.
I think that the games where you can hide, where you have to hide, have been very popular recently, and it takes the right. It takes the right balance, I think, to make it good. Because like I played Remothered last year, the first Remothered, and it had parts of it that were scary, but at the end it just became, I realized, how I could shake people off, and it just became a hide and seek simulator, right? At that point, it was just someone, I'd alert the guy, and he'd chase me for a while, and I'd run him in circles, and then I'd creep under a couch, and then that just became the entire gameplay loop. So I think games where you can fight or you can hide, and you have to kind of make the choice, really end up scaring me the most.
Yeah, because I know there is another game out there called Dead by Daylight. No.
Oh yeah. That's the multiplayer one, right?
Yeah, and I know it's unless you're playing on a team. If you're playing by yourself, I assume it's much more scarier because you have no one to talk to, no one to communicate with any of this. So I think another part of the games is I watch people play more games than I actually do play more games. My own sadistic part of myself, I like to watch people freak out.
That is always fun to watch someone else playing it and freak out.
So it's that sort of fact is I think that's one of the reasons why I do enjoy horror in general is watching people react to it. Because I've so much wanted to get friends to go watch movies with me because I know I won't be as scared as much as them, and I can see them get frightened, and I enjoy that little pain, I guess they go through. I don't know, that could be just my sick sense of humor. That's just me though. But that's the whole thing with video games is that I can watch people play and still have that fun with it. So I can watch them get freaked out and I can enjoy that part. But I also get freaked out for them going, "Oh God!" So when something gets on their screen, they either scream and yell, and I go, "Oh crap!" as well. So it's infectious.
an old friend of mine, Jamie, she used to get really freaked out by games. So of course, being the great friends we were, we would always make her steer anytime we were like doing a playthrough of a horror game. And it was probably nasty of us, but I think she had fun with it too. But she'd get really scared. I remember in one time she was playing the that really early Slender Man game, I think, and something freaked her out, and she was playing on a laptop. She just slammed the laptop closed, like pushed it away from her. Uh, Good time. We were
I
very
mean,
mean.
I mean, things like that was always fun. So going on from video games, I know you probably have another code for a game. Do you want to drop it now?
Sure, I'll go ahead and drop another code right now. This one is for Song of Horror Complete Edition. And the code is VCRALDBQPX5LQY. Whoever gets that first can have it. I hope you enjoy it.
Since we went on from games, we went from books to games. Now let's go on to manga because I know you. I know specifically you love Junji. I know you specifically love Junji Ito.
I love Ito to death.
And I'm not much into horror manga either. That's the thing is I rather read words, have that visualization in my mind for my own self. So I didn't really pick up much horror manga. I mean, I've started some, but I will say that for later. But like, what is about Junji Ito that actually scares you or gets you? What you like?
So for Ito, I have to. So when I first encountered Ito, a lot of his work did actually scare me. There is, in particular, I remember this was quite a while ago, probably in the late 2000s at some point. I think when I first encountered, it was an image of Soichi's child from. There's a story where it's in one of the Soichi stories, and it's in the future, and he's running this like haunted house and stuff, and he just has all these sharp, jagged teeth, and it's a pretty popular page. You'll see it around. I just remember opening it up and looking at that image where whatever forum it got posted on, and it freaked me out so bad, and I had to close it immediately. God, I don't want to even look at that or think about it. It freaked me out so much. And then, of course, I went back. I was like, wow, that was really interesting, actually. I want to see what that's from. And so I tracked it down. But at this point, I think partially just because I've read a lot of his stuff, it doesn't invoke a fear response in me anymore. And a lot of his stuff isn't supposed to, I think, right? Like Hellstar Remina, I love that story, but it's not. And it is a horror story, but it's not really something that scares me. It's not something that I stay up at night about. There are manga that oh, go ahead.
Oh no, because again, the only thing I have for Junji Ito is the pictures. I've seen those pictures 1,000 times. Like the picture of the lady with like the head extending outwards, or the picture of the guy crawling into a hole, saying, "This one's made for me."
Yep.
So like, I wasn't able to get into it as much, but so what you were talking about one of your favorite stories. What's another one you can probably recommend to someone?
So another one that I can recommend. Let's see. Really, I like all of his work, which is sort of the cop-out answer. But his short stories are, I think, where he shines the most, because I think when he goes on for longer stories, with the exception of two, I think his longer stories tend to he doesn't know what to do with them towards the end. I still think some of them are very fascinating towards the end. Tomie isn't my favorite ending, but I would be assuming that at some point he would make another Tomie. The character is so popular. So that may not be done, right? But then there's Uzumaki, which is probably his most famous work across time. Maybe not right now. Tomie might be more famous right now. But across time, definitely Uzumaki is his most famous work. And that actually has, I think, a good ending that ties the themes of stuff together. And Black Paradox, which isn't published over here yet, which turns into something other than a horror story, I think, but it starts out very much as a horror story, and I think that is a very satisfying ending also. On the other hand, Gyo, if you've ever read Gyo or seen the movie, which is different in a lot of places, I think just absolutely ending absolutely sucks. It really loses itself and falls off the rails, and then just kind of stops unsatisfyingly. I always tell people, if you read Gyo, read the first volume and then stop.
Because I know that he had like anime adaptation of like his short stories.
That was not. I was very disappointed in that. Unfortunately, I just felt like it did not capture his art well. I did not feel like it captured pacing well or anything like that. I was not very happy with it personally.
Yeah, because he has very vivid art, and I saw that I was like, that seems kind of muted. Like the color choices were really off or like flat. I think is the best word I can think of for that stuff. But um, I do remember reading one horror manga. I think it was something about a haunted house in the middle of Japan, like a Japanese park
Uh huh.
that was like sucking in like people, and it was a very national event that the government tried to blow it up, and it didn't move anything.
Is this Sobate Must Be Destroyed?
I believe so.
I love my icon on Twitter is actually a character from Sobate. I love Sobate. Anyway, continue.
No, yeah, because I remember reading parts of that one. I'm like, oh, that's kind of creepy. And like it creeped me out too, which is very rare sometimes when it comes to certain things now. But like,
That one has some very genuine, effective horror stuff early on, and then later it kind of becomes like a shonen battle manga. But I don't particularly mind. I still like Sobate.
yeah, 'cause I think I already read like the beginning parts of it. I'm like, ooh, that kind of creeped me out, and I kind of dropped it and went to do some other things. But like, it was very much very. It burned a portion of my mind of like, ooh, that's kind of creepy. I'll get to it sometime, and I haven't yet. So, I,
It's a fun read. I definitely recommend it.
yeah,
I will say that. So I was talking about how Ito doesn't scare me anymore. One thing that does still scare me, if you like horror and you like manga, I really recommend reading Fuan no Tane or Seeds of Despair by I can't remember his first name. His last name. The author is Nakayama. It's collections of very short stories, like 2 to 4 pages, and not all of them are winners, but some of them really are. I was really surprised. I read it for the first time, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and for the first time in a long time, at the night that I read it, I took a shower and I had the lights off because I do that sometimes, and I was sitting in the shower and I realized I don't want to open the shower curtain because some part of my brain after reading that thinks that something is going to be there on the other side waiting for me, and it just freaked me out real bad. And I'm not used to that. I'm not used to being afraid of the dark.
ooh. Is his name Shigeo
Uh,
Nakayama?
I'm not totally sure. I would have to look it up.
Because well, being on brand, I have a zombie manga by him, by a Shigeo Nakayama. So I wanted to bring that up because, like, again, you said that I was like that reminds me of the manga I have. I don't read much, but that's one of the stuff I just got into recently.
I
But we can
just
talk
looked it up.
about.
Oh, as you said, just look it up. It's Masaki Nakayama.
Okay. Then there's another person out there with Nakayama. I guess a very common name, I guess. So we're more. You're very adverse in manga. I'm not really much into it. We're talking about video games. Is there any like, TV shows you watch? Because I know I watch like American Horror Story. Not really that scary, but it's something at least.
I used to watch a lot of those, like, quote unquote, real ghost story stuff, a haunting, that sort of thing when I was younger. I always really enjoyed those sorts of things. But as far as horror TV shows, I can't really think of any that I've particularly watched. I watched, Stranger Things, like every other human on the planet did. And I enjoyed that. But other than that, I can't really think of too much that's like a long narrative sort of thing like that.
Yeah. See, like the only thing because again, TV is very strict on what they can show.
Mm.
So like the only thing I was able to watch was like American Horror Story, like the seasons that came out. It wasn't really that scary, but it was kind of like that creepy factor of like creeping you out a bit. I think I got
Yeah.
up to like the last or like the latest 4 seasons, and then I kind of dropped it after that because I stopped watching TV.
I have watched some of those compilation stuff, Creep Show or Tales from the Crypt and stuff like that when I was younger. Also, I enjoyed those. I know they've remade some of that, but I haven't really seen any of the newer stuff.
Yeah, because we also brought up on the last podcast. We brought up like Out of the Limits and like the Twilight Zone.
Oh, I love the Twilight Zone. I've never really thought of the Twilight Zone as horror, but I think some of them could definitely qualify.
Like I said, the unknown and the existential dread it sometimes puts into people
Mm-hmm.
was always like that. Oh, this partial of the of what I liked about horror. Seeing people deal with that and all that stuff was pretty fun to watch. Did you ever watch X-Files growing up?
You know, I didn't. I have a friend who's really into it and has an X-Files tattoo, but I personally have not seen much of the show.
The opening theme song scared the crap out of me when I was growing up. The do 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 do. It freaked me out growing up when I would hear. I'm like, oh god, that's it. I don't know, somehow it triggered me a bit. I was like, ugh, really freaked me out. Because I remember watching an episode which I guess now it was pulled from actual airing again, but that was the only episode I watched, so it really freaked me out. So it was very much like the creepiest one I watched was the one they pulled from airing again. So that was pretty fun to know about that.
Sort of on that same vein, moving on a little bit. Uh, One thing that I think is really unfortunate is I don't know that there's really any good horror anime out there that I have personally encountered. There's stuff with horror themes that's good, right? Like Vampire Hunter D, I really like. But when it comes to like when I'm looking for something to scare me, I really don't know that I've ever encountered anything in animation that actually really scares me. And I don't know why that is.
Yeah, because the same thing with me too. Is it's that I don't feel that connection or that feel that same feeling when I watch stuff like that. Because I know there's like another, which is basically Final Destination in anime form, but that doesn't scare me as much as Final Destination did. So,
And it's I can't be that it's a drawing because I do get genuinely scared by some of the manga. I am looking forward to the Uzumaki adaptation that might end up being very good. I don't know. I'm planning to watch Kazuo Umez's what is it? The Curse of Kazuo Umez, which is a 1990s horror OVA. I'm planning to watch that probably in the next week here. And I respect him as a mangaka, and that might be pretty scary. I've seen some shorts, some clips from it that look good, but I don't know.
yeah, I still don't understand why I'm not scared for anime. Because another one of the other anime I enjoyed watching was School Life. If you ever know what that show's about, is these girls are locked down in a uh, elementary school or a junior high, and the zombie apocalypse happened around them. For one of the girls, they don't see anything wrong with it. They just figure it's a regular school, and everyone else they're fighting for their survival. But I enjoyed that. It was cutesy as long with them trying to fend off zombies every now and again. But
There
yeah,
is.
none of
Oh, go ahead.
no, you go. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, yeah, there are a lot of things out there that have horror theming that I do think are really good. Another example, I think the Vampire Princess Miyu OVAs, and actually the show too. But the show's a little bit more Sailor Moony than the OVAs, which actually have like sort of a horror feeling to them. And I really do like those, but again, they don't really scare me.
Yeah, I don't understand about it either. So as we went from anime, did you watch like YouTube videos? I know you're into creepypastas. I know the internet has like that fascination with like the weird and creepy. Did you like the don't hug me, I'm scared videos and things like that?
I'm not familiar with that. I can't say for sure.
It was a series of videos that invoked this very, very much deep terror.
Hmm.
So like one video could be talking about how time is new, time is very thing. It gives you examples of time and a bunch of other stuff, and then it goes, oh, we're all dying, we're all getting old, and then you see them like melt because they're aging rapidly, and then it
Oh,
goes,
geez.
and then it go, oh, well, time's up, time to end the video, and it goes from there. Or
Oh, wow.
or like the first one, being creative. Being the first episode of that is a very good example of going from happy to straight up terror images to then ending with like, and that's it.
Oh, man.
So I would recommend watching those things because I think you'll probably get a kick out of them. Watching them all in a row would be fun for you as well. Because one of the things I do watch is like game theory, and it
Mhm.
talks about stuff like that and the deep dive into those stuff. Because again, they're all supposed to tell a story, and you get somewhat of that, but it's all buried under this like a facade of creepiness.
Interesting. That seems interesting.
So I think it's a very good way to get horror out there and to get it to where everyone can watch it for something. Like that or Salad Fingers. Salad Fingers was very like
Salad
creepy.
fingers is really popular when I was young. Actually, I remember seeing that a lot.
Yeah, Salad Fingers was made just to be creepy, I think, and it did, and it worked. I have a very good, funny story of we're in English class. It was towards the end of the year, so we're starting to wind down on what we could do, what we were doing, and so we decided, well, it's a free time, we'll just watch YouTube videos. Someone decided to watch Salad Fingers, I, and me being the person who's watched it a bunch of times, I would sit there in the back of the classroom doing something, and then I'm sitting there mouthing and just saying the words along with the video as I'm doing like typing a paper or something like that. And I just feel these eyes turn from the screen to me as I'm just sitting there going, I love the throat. And then I feel the rust on my skin. I'm sitting there doing this as I'm
Ugh.
typing something. And I just go, I look, I'm like, oh, sorry, that was me. Sorry about that. As I'm doing this back again. So like that sort of thing of like freaking people out was always fun with for me. So
Mm-hmm.
having that freak them out and then me being the one to repeat it and say the exact same lines as it's going through it was fun for me, I guess. But yeah, Salad Fingers was a good one. What was like any creepy pastas that you've read before?
Probably my big favorite is Red on White. Which another thing that's always really effective for me in horror stories is anytime that the protagonist thinks that they are safe, and then you later learn that they weren't. That always gives me the chills, and Red on White is a great example of that. There's another one that I believe is it might be a creepypasta, but I think it's actually an older story about a man sleeping in a cabin with a bunch of portraits surrounding it. And if you know the story, you know what I'm talking about. But that sort of thing always freaks me out.
I don't think I've heard of that one.
No,
Uh,
well, I'll share them with you at some point. Um,
okay, okay, cool.
yeah,
Because I do want something to like freak me out a bit. I mean,
yeah,
it's
I recommend looking up Red on White if you are not familiar with it. The creepypasta Red on White. It's good.
okay.
It's not very long either.
Fair enough. Um, I do have some questions for you because I want to know your thoughts on slashers or supernatural. Which one did you like, and which one do you like less? I guess.
So I kind of touched on this earlier, but definitely for me, I'm very much more a fan of the supernatural horror. I'm a very much a bigger fan of ghosts and demons than I am of like the slasher type of thing. That's not that I don't understand, the appeal of a slasher film. Not that I can't enjoy it or anything like that, but to me, it is less scary to me and it's less interesting to me.
And for me, I enjoy the slasher ones more because that's a real person. That's a real thing happening to them. Because again, I'm not particularly believing that ghosts and demons are real. Uh, Strike me down if they are, but I mean, I'll probably be haunted by saying that. But the realest thing to me is that someone could snap and do this because it's a real life thing that could happen. There was a movie called Wolf Creek.
Hmm.
It's about a serial killer in Australia that would attack hikers and people going out into the outback. That's based on the real thing happening that happened in Australia. So that made it extra real for me about the slasher portion of it. Like this could be something happening because
Uh,
we
oh, go ahead. I was just gonna say I'm gonna in here. I'm gonna drop another game code if you don't mind here real quick
oh
because I know it's
yeah
been a while since the last one. So this one is for The Beast Inside. And the Steam code for it is T7Y2YLZ344PTVMN. Anyway, go ahead and continue.
yeah because like being slashers being a very real thing as well because again as a human being we all have that fascination with like serial killers.
Mm.
Like I know America has this very big fascination with serial killers. I mean, we have
Oh,
TV
it's like a
shows
whole
related to that.
industry. Yeah.
Yeah, we have the whole industry related to that stuff. So like slashers being almost a real thing was more fun for me than like the ghosts and that stuff, which I enjoyed as well. Don't get me wrong. I think one of my favorite movies was Insidious. Insidious being no Sinister. Sinister being this ghost that steals children. That was, yeah. Have you seen it?
I have not. I have not.
Yeah. So it's a ghost that well, I should be upper reality. It's a ghost that haunts a house that steals
Ideal.
yeah, that steals children, or steals children, and it very much so basically is a very much haunted house film. It is a good movie. It has great plots. It has like Ethan Hawke in there, as well as the police officer who did Eddie from the newest It movie.
Okay.
It Chapter 2. He plays as the police deputy in that film. But I think it's very much your alley. Sinister is, so I don't know. Give it a watch.
It does sound like it's up my alley. Yeah, I think one of the things with me and slasher films is that I'm extremely overconfident in my ability to fight somebody, and that just has always been true. So I think that may be a big part of why I'm like, oh, it's just a dude with a knife. I can take him, right? That's not that scary. Just whack him on the head, bro. And of course, in reality, if it's they come for you when you're not looking or whatever, in some of those, or maybe it's Jason or someone, and you're not going to be able to stop them. People try to fight Jason all the time. It never works. But to me, that might be one of the reasons it doesn't end up being so scary. Whereas like the supernatural stuff, to me, because there is that element of the unknown there, because you really can't measure up against it, you don't necessarily know what it is or how to stop it. I think that's great. Another example of a great movie that does a lot with a little is the original The Omen. And I think that the like mounting reality of the supernatural in that film makes it scary without actually like putting a big monster in your face or something like that. And the fact that they, you don't know how to fight it, right?
Yeah, I think that's always another thing too. Is that you don't know what to fight. It's a ghost. How do you do you hit it with a stick? No, you run away and hopefully it doesn't find you.
Yeah.
I think because again my brain always like if it's a person, aim for the knees, aim for the eyes, aim for the face. You can always take down a person like that. But like again, it to me ghosts aren't real, so I'm not too scared of it.
I get that.
So it's like it's the wind, it's knocking something over, or it's blowing on something, it's things like that. But no, I that's why I like slashers more, because that realness is what makes it more scarier. So that's for me what slashers versus supernatural for me is. Speaking of horror movies, do you like jump scares or do you not?
So I think I used to be very much one of those people who was super anti jump scare. But my opinion has matured like fine wine as I have aged, and I believe that there is a time and place for them. I think a lot of the time they're still cheap, and I think a lot of modern horror movies go for them too often.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that when you have the potential for a jump scare there, it allows you to build a lot of tension in the viewer. And I think without if you know that a jump scare isn't coming, it's less scary.
Because again, I have that same opinion where, well, I wasn't too against it. I always thought they were fun. That again, for me, watching a scary movie, horror movie, that wasn't to me scary. But something like that happened out of nowhere, that's where I get freaked out the most. Like, oh god. All right, cool. Well, so let's move on forward through this, and it makes it more interesting for me. So I wasn't too against it at all in the beginning of it. But yeah, I think if they could do them right, they add everything to the movie. To myself, I don't think that they've ever used it too much in anything. But again,
Okay.
I'm not too much of a critic for stuff like that.
I got you. Yeah, that's totally fair. And there's certainly a contingent of people that really enjoy that sort of thing. For me, I think that, like I said, a lot of what I get impressed by is the building of an atmosphere and a mood, and stuff like that. And I feel like sometimes it just feels like they're just evoking a instinctual response rather than crafting something. But I guess you have to craft a jump scare too, right? You have to make it or whatever. It just sometimes feels like it's a little bit easier when I talked earlier about the Fatal Frame 1, where there's this in particular scene where you're looking for this thing and you turn the camera up and you just end up freaking yourself out, but the thing is there the entire time, and stuff like that always impresses me more, I think. Or some instances in movies where like something is in the background of the frame and you don't notice it at first, but then later you do, and that like gets you. That stuff always is very impressive to me.
Yeah. So, again, looking back at all that stuff, that's what made me more afraid of things. So I think I like jump scares a lot more than most people would like it. Like there's a one I watched in a movie called Dead Silence. Did you ever hear anything about that one?
Dead Silence, I'm not familiar with that. No.
Yeah, so it's written and directed by the same guy who did Saw, so James Wan.
Oh,
He
okay.
went he went on to do like the Insidious movies and stuff like that. And Annabelle and Annabeth or something like that. But it's basically this story about a ghost that was haunting this town because she was murdered by the townsfolk. And
Oh.
yeah, and the way she does it is she possesses these dolls. She was a ventriloquist artist. And this whole started off because they believe she kidnapped a boy who was calling her out on stage. The boy was fine, but the townsfolk didn't quite like that, so they murdered her for this. And so she was killing off like relatives and families of the town. I think one of my favorite jump scares is the fact that you see this doll sitting in the corner. The guy turns, looks away, it's gone. He doesn't freak out, and it's gone, completely gone. And all you see is this person in a white sheet, and then next, the sheet comes and just attacks him right away. You expect him to pull off and see something, but the thing attacks him,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's always, that's what always got me was that immediate fear was like, oh, that instinctual fear of things moving. I guess what makes me jump. So
So I did just rag on jump scares, but I do have there's another example of one that I really like that is a scripted like jump scare, in the fifth Fatal Frame game. I don't want to spoil too much, but it's a situation where you walk into this environment and you're expecting something to happen, and there are these things lying around. You're just expecting one of them to just come at you, and you kind of figure it won't be the first, right? And
mm,
it might not be the second. You figure it's probably the third. It's not the third. And then you just kind of start to let your guard down as you're going down this hallway. And then all of a sudden one of them just moves, and all it does is just shift and kind of fall. And it doesn't attack you or anything, but it scared the bejesus out of me. And I thought that was very clever. And that was a very good use of a jump scare, in my opinion.
yeah, if they can do it right, they will absolutely get you. As we're winding down, was there anything you were watching recently that you would probably promote, suggest, or anything like that?
I definitely the Fatal Frame games, of course. Two of my favorite horror themed games are getting remasters or remakes this year. Fatal Frame 5 is getting a remake, and there's gonna be an English language physical version, though you have to order it through PlayAsia or something from Taiwan or Hong Kong or wherever. And then also Alan Wake is getting a remaster, which is I'm so happy about because it bombed originally, and it's always a game I liked quite a bit. It's not scary per se, but it's very creepy. It's very horror-esque with a lot of Twin Peaks and Stephen King poured in there, and I definitely very much recommend that. There have been some stuff that I've seen that isn't super great, but I've been enjoying. Some really schlocky, like I watched one of the Tomie live action movies. It's one of Junji Ito's properties, and it wasn't any good, but I did have fun with it. It was fun.
I mean, Japanese live action has always been that weird thing. It's like it's not super great, but it's always a blast when watching them.
I haven't.
Um,
I'm a poor horror fan. I haven't seen Ringu or Ju-on ever, despite being a weeb and a horror fan. I really need to fix that. Um,
what? What?
I
You never
know.
see? You never like? I'm not talking about like the original Japanese version. I'm like, did you have not seen like any of the American remakes?
I haven't seen either, which is just I know a huge failure on my part.
What? I think we need to sit down one of these days and just binge watch like horror movies, I guess.
Let's actually do that. That sounds great.
What's the remake for Ju-on called again?
The Grudge.
The Grudge. That's the one it's called. I couldn't think of the name. There was another one called One Missed Call. I
I
can
don't know
very
that one.
Yeah, so basically it's the same. You would get phone calls from the future about your death. It will play the
Mm.
minute you die, and it's very spooky. And I remember vividly the cover for it was a picture of a woman's face, and her eyes are her mouth screaming, as well as her like again she's in.
Ooh,
Yeah, it's like the like poster for it was very creepy looking.
that
Um,
that sounds up my alley. Alley. Eyes' mouth screaming sounds like just it's right there for me.
yeah, so I would recommend stuff like that. I mean, I've been get since Halloween started. I'm like, oh, I better watch some scary movies. I was just on HBO Max and I was rewatching one of my favorite movies growing up. What's 13 Ghosts? Do you remember that movie?
I think I saw it at the time. Like I don't know if it was at the time or when I was young at some point, but I don't remember much about it to be honest.
Yeah, so it's a remake from I believe 1970. It's a remake of a 1970 movie. The old 1970 movie had special glasses you would put on, like the 3D like cardboard glasses,
Hmm.
so that you can see the ghosts in the movie. Uh,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so the remakes did something with that, and so instead of so they had glasses, they had a way to see the ghosts in in the movie.
Hmm.
Um, but it's about this about these 12 ghosts trapped in this house, and this house was built to for a machine to see the future, and it was a crazy like supernatural horror movie about these like 12 ghosts that were absolutely terrifying. They did these whole shorts about each ghost and their backstory, which made it
Oh,
most. Yeah, so you can just look up on YouTube and look 13 ghosts backstories, and you'll find like 12 ghosts backstories on them. They're all very interesting and very creepy with the way they did them. But
yeah.
I
I
would
will have
recommend,
to check that out.
yeah, but I would recommend the movie. It's with Tony Shalhoub and F. Murray Abrams and Matthew Lillard.
Okay.
Yeah, so 13 Ghosts was a very big one I just watched recently. What else did I watch? Trick or Treat is always a mainstay in my house. I watch it every Halloween. Trick or Treat is a horror movie that was made, I believe, 2008, 2009, around that time. The like small vignettes on Halloween night, like four little small stories that somehow interconnect everywhere in this small town that celebrates Halloween. It's a very good movie. I suggest you watch it. It's not totally scary, but it's a fun, good Halloween movie.
I can enjoy those too, right? Like I enjoy a lot of. I watch the Adams Family a lot. You know, it's not scary, but it's very Halloween esque. It's creepy esque.
Yeah. Um, and I have a couple of zombie manga that my friend gave me. He was giving away manga from his collection, and I picked up the two zombie mangas he had called Tokyo Undead and Hour of the Zombie.
Okay, I'm not.
Uh,
I've heard Tokyo Undead, but I haven't read it.
yeah. The stories by Shigeru Nakayama and art by Tsukasa Saimura. But it's a very good manga. I would suggest reading it because it's that same thing with zombie movies for me is that everything ends for them, complete utter apocalypse, and they have to figure out first the zombies and then the horror that is humanity. Everyone like humans are very terrible creatures to each other. So like, that other extent of horror is always fun. Is always something I enjoyed with zombie manga because they not only have to survive the zombies but it's other humans. So
I completely agree with that. Like that's part of the interesting thing about those. I think is the human interactions. I think that's a big part of why people really get into zombie stuff, right? Like the zombies are almost a set piece or in the focus in a lot of zombie, not just manga, a lot of zombie media. I want to.
and
Oh, go ahead.
no, you guys are.
I was just going to say, I'm going to go ahead and plug because I've been really enjoying it over the past year. Razor Blades, which is a Western horror comic magazine that's being made by it's being the project being spearheaded by James Tynion the Fourth, um, he's worked on Batman and stuff like that. And it's just these collections from different artists of horror themed comics and some single arts and some like short stories and stuff like that. And that's been really fun. And I really recommend that to anyone who's into horror.
Yeah, because that sounds fascinating. Because again, like I said, I mean, I don't really read a lot, but I've been wanting to get into it. Like I've had that zombie manga I've been reading for now. So was it called Razor Blades?
Yeah, Razor Blades. Razor Blades, the horror magazine, and I believe they have 4 issues out. I don't think 5 is out yet. I'm sure it will come at some point, but not yet.
Do you have another game you would like to drop?
Let's see. In terms of games, I don't really have anything else I'm really itching to tell people about. I don't think at the moment. I guess I do. I haven't talked about this yet. So before we quit, I do want to talk about a little bit about the Miyako-chan anime is airing, and I just want to air some grievances because I'm a big fan of the manga, and I think the manga isn't like a complete horror manga despite the setting. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, but the gist of it is that there's this girl that can see these ghosts, and as long as she pretends that she can't tell they're there, they leave her alone. And so she has to go through all these situations where she's trying really hard to pretend like she can't see what's right in front of her face. And it's sometimes funny, sometimes genuinely scary. It's one of those things, a couple of the moments in it, despite it being primarily like a comedy manga, have actually like given me chills, and I've really appreciated that. The anime just came out, and I was really looking forward to it. And you know me well enough to know that I don't usually shirk away from stuff just because it has fan service in it.
Mhm.
Like I like Kill la Kill, right? I like what I can think of other stuff. I've
High
enjoyed
School of
watching
the Dead.
yeah,
High School
High
of the
School of the
Dead.
Dead, Devil Under Yoko, but they just really turned up the levels of fan service for the anime adaptation to like 11. It's like constant, and I'm kind of annoyed by it because I'm like, well, now I can't. Number one, now I can't recommend this to anybody or share it with anyone
Yeah.
except for a select group of people. And number two, I feel like it's taking a lot away from the atmosphere. And it's extra frustrating because I feel like they actually, in some of the scariest scenes, they do get a lot of the tension right, and they're doing this weird morphing thing with a lot of the ghosts that I think is very effective and very creepy. And so I'm just kind of like, wow, I wish that I could just get that part of it for at least when the horror scenes are up, right? Like instead of this like 10-second pan up her backside or something like that. So I just want to air that while we're still here. I want to complain. If you're enjoying it, anyone who's listening, don't worry about my opinion. Go have fun. Enjoy it. Check if you watched it and the fan service was too much for you. I definitely recommend checking out the manga. It still is a little bit horny, but not as bad.
Okay. I mean, I have nothing else to say. How about you?
For me, I think that wraps up just about anything I wanted to talk about. So I will drop one more code here. All right, this code is for Stubbs the Zombie, also not exactly a horror game, but horror themed. And the code is TN5IV T7X9JJRMH9. And whoever gets that, I hope you enjoy it.
Well, thanks, Ed, for those codes. Thank you guys for tuning into the podcast. My name is Frank. This was Ed.
Hey.
And please check out our other content. There will be in the description below. For all things anime, video games, and comic books, please follow us on Twitter at Advent7 or visit our website, advent7.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll be seeing you guys around next time. Thanks for listening.